Okay,
Okay,
we're recording
we're recording.
and we are together, as you can see, in the same space. People always ask me, are we twins? Do you get that a lot?
Well, yeah, I know that when I did my Thankful Thursday,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
celebrating you, I talked about the fact that people, you know, twins.
yeah. Yeah, I know we look a lot
And
alike.
we had the same, voice inflections, intonations, and stuff like that. So I'm sure, you know, a lot of our body movement is the same. I think I was looking at one of the videos that we had did, and I was doing like this, and you were doing like, wow, wow.
I'm sure some of it is hereditary. I'm sure some is how you grew up, your environment,
Mhm.
those sorts of things. But yeah, so I get that from time to time. I live in a space where, a lot of people that I know have not met you.
Okay.
So the little things that we've been putting out on Instagram and Facebook is the first time many of them have
Have
ever
seen
seen
me.
you.
Okay. Okay.
So they're like, "Oh, you all are twins." But
No, we're not
we're
twins.
not twins. We're 2 years apart. Um, I'm 57, so you can do the math there. But I did, because I'm home this
Mhm.
this week. I did, I am seeing people who do know that we know each other. So, something I told you this earlier, someone called me your little brother today. And first of all, I'm 57.
Right, like there's no little. Like
Uh,
even if it was little at this stage, it's no more little.
yeah, and most importantly, I've only had to be your little brother twice in life, and it was for a very limited time.
Mhm.
So most of my life, I haven't been anyone's little brother or anything like that. So it felt weird when I first heard it. I was like, wait, what? Then I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am technically her little brother.
Younger, not little.
Because I still call one of our cousins my big little cousin, because he's way bigger than me, but he's still my younger cousin, so I still call him my big little cousin. So
So
today,
today.
and hopefully we'll stay on time today, because we're together, and I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh my God.
Oh, that was funny. That was funny. So today we mentioned in our first episode about, we were talking about line brothers and line sisters,
I got a lot of flack for that already. I
and,
just,
I didn't get any
I'm so,
flack for it.
oh, yeah, because you were the corrector. I was the one that put it out there, and so.
Yeah, I want to explain though, because we are Greek. Um, and we pledged in the 80s. We both pledged in the 80s.
Mhm.
Line brother or line sister was what we called the people we were online with
Mhm.
at that
At
time.
that time,
So,
yes.
on my line, there were 10 people. When we were pledging, going through that process or whatever I don't know the right term they use now. I know it's not pledging. Um, but going through that process, we called each other line brother, and they would say, "Hey, tell your line brother this, or this is your line brother," blah blah blah. Once the line was over,
There's no more line.
there's no more line.
You're now part of the organization.
So we don't call each other line brothers or anything like that at that time.
At that time.
So that's why I was like, "Are we going with that or not?" But but since we are Greek and we want to talk about being Greek, and because we've had different generational understandings of being Greek, like my son is Greek,
My daughter is Greek.
so we, know it from our era and kind of their era as well. Let's talk about what it means to be Greek. So this is our Black Greek conversation. And, we don't want you all to, um, you know, at us.
I know, right?
So this is real. I know people people
That
get
means-
upset when you
that
start
means-
talking about Greekdom and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're
yeah.
going to talk about it from our own
Yes,
experiences.
absolutely.
So we're not going to talk about it from your experience. And just to be clear, I said we both pledged in the 80s. We also pledged at the same institution, which is in Michigan.
Mhm.
So we can only speak so we can only speak about it from that level. And so to start us off, let's really think about how we got to where we are. So, and when I was in college, we called it Pan-Hell. I don't know. I know I've worked on college campuses, so I know that they call it NPHC. The first 50 times I heard those words,
You're
I was like,
"What's
what is
that?"
that? Yeah, I don't know what that is. But they meant what I knew to be Pan-Hell. But I also knew that Pan-Hell was something, or NPHC was something that what didn't always exist. So how did we get there?
So, so what happened back in 1930, a group of Black Greek organizations at the time decided to come together because of the like-mindedness as far as what we were trying to achieve at that point, dealing with societal issues, racial inequality, things happening on campuses as far as education. And so since there were similar thoughts or ideas at the time, they determined to come together, to be kind of like one voice, even though we all are separate, but to kind of be equal together in the things that we would stand for as Black Greek organizations. So in 1930, May 10th, exactly, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, and Zeta Phi Beta all came together to form what we know as NHPC.
And what did you call it?
NPHC.
NPHC. Pan-Hell is what we call it. Pan-Hell. We don't even know the name.
The history is correct. I just got the letters wrong.
Like, hey, Greek. Where you playing that?
You don't even know. Okay, okay. So then in 1931, Phi Beta Sigma and Alpha Phi Alpha joined the group, but it wasn't until 1937 when Sigma Gamma Rho, and I think I need to go back because I think I said Sigma Gamma Rho first.
No.
Oh, I did not. Okay. So it was in 1937 that Sigma Gamma Rho joined NPHC.
National Pan-Hellenic Council. So that's it. Yeah.
NPHC. And that's when we became known as the Elite Eight.
Elite Eight. That's what I remember in college.
That was the Elite Eight.
And I still say that most of the time. Because that's what you know.
Yeah, that's what we knew coming into Greekdom.
Okay.
In 1997, that is when Iota
Phi Theta?
Iota Phi Theta joined the group. I don't want to
again, don't at us with that.
No, I know I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I do want to get it right. So in 1997, the Iotas joined the Elite Eight, and then that's when we became known as the Divine Nine. So you'll hear Divine Nine a lot.
You'll hear Divine Nine a lot, but I want to also say that I graduated from college in 1987. So for my at least 10 years after I graduated, it was the Elite Eight. So my first time going to like a grad chapter meeting, alumni chapter meeting in 99, and they were talking about the Divine Nine. I had no idea what they were talking about. I'm like, what? I don't know what that is. Someone had to say, oh, it's the Elite Eight. It took me a minute, and then I didn't know who the ninth thing was. To me, the Elite Eight was kind of symmetrical because
Right.
there were four sororities and four
For
fraternities.
fraternities, right.
And I know that, we were on a campus where there were other organizations, other fraternities who wanted to be in the Pan-Hellenic Council. And I don't know what the process was to get in
But
it,
they could not,
but
yeah.
they could not get in.
Mhm.
So I don't know how this group was selected over all of those other groups. I don't, yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
I don't know
how that
I don't
happened.
know the why. I just know that it did occur.
So we were there and in in college in the 80s. It was the Elite Eight. It became the Divine Nine. Now we're here.
Over
So
here.
my question is, and this is what I ask anyone who pledges or is initiated into a graduate chapter or undergraduate chapter as well. How do you see yourself fitting here? So I remember going through processes and understanding this was a lifelong commitment.
Mhm.
I also very often see that for a lot of people, it's not a lifelong commitment.
Right,
So, I don't think that when we think about joining this, that it's just for college.
right.
So, what can you say that you've gotten out of being a member of your organization?
Well, so I mean, part of it is being around a lot of like-minded women that are, dedicated to service and community and sisterhood. Like mostly sisterhood. Like we do all the other things, but the sisterhood part of it is, kind of crucial. I think for me, though, coming into it, even as an undergrad, I was just very much struck by the the current members and you know I wasn't calling them that then, but I felt like there's some bosses on this campus. Like it wasn't a lot of them, but the way that they carried themselves and handled the business, like they were so organized and in pursuit of excellence in such a way that really kind of aligned with how I wanted to live my life. So yes, I could say I was excited about the possibility to unite with these sisters in this particular way. And I did see it as a lifetime commitment. I
Mhm.
did see it like, okay, I'll, be able to carry this through. I know in the position, that I currently am, when I see, I mean, any Divine Nine, but particularly those in my organization, if I see a resume that has, my organization in it, I'm pulling it at least to explore it a little bit
Mhm.
more.
Mhm.
So, like, our thing, the fact that we help each other.
Yeah.
That's just, very kind of crucial to me. I mean, I've seen it, as, we've gone through, different ups and downs, life challenges or whatever, through, divorces, through having to bury, one of my sons in the early 2000s, marriages, raising children, and then, for, some of the things that I've done, community wise, having, my sisters assist me to be able to meet the goals that I try to do for youth in the community. That that is particularly special to me. And so I'm, glad to be part of this union.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking about some of the things that you were saying. I thought of it as a lifelong commitment also.
Mhm,
I will say that transition from being an undergraduate into a graduate chapter was extremely
mhm,
difficult. So much so that I gave up trying. Like I wanted to still be active, but I graduated at 21.
mhm.
So I'm in a grad chapter where I'm the age of their children.
Right.
and I think they treated it as such. So I
Mhm.
wasn't comfortable there. There was nothing for me to do. I'm not interested in just going to meetings because was initiated as an undergrad. You spend a lot of time together as an undergraduate, more so than just meetings. So, you do things together, you get to know each other very well. And I wasn't interested, and still not am interested in being, you know, just doing the work, as they
Right, right,
say.
right, right,
I don't mind the work. I've done a lot of work
right,
in my as an alumni brother, but I don't want to just do that anymore.
right.
So it was very difficult, as I said, to transition. And I didn't feel comfortable in a graduate chapter, alumni chapter until I was about 30.
See, now my experience was a little bit different, and I think part of it was because my first grad chapter was my grad chapter. Like I transitioned from undergrad
Hmm.
to a grad chapter in the same city. So so the women in that organization, one, they already knew who I was. Like
Hmm.
they may not have known me personally, but they knew who I was. So the transition was a lot easier than even I thought it was. And at the time there were quite a few of us in the same age group. Some from my undergrad chapter and
Hmm.
some that had, transitioned there from, working at some of the companies in that particular city. But even some, I felt like the older sisters at that time actually really did a good job of embracing us and taking us under their wing and getting us involved in different committees and all of that. So my transition was a lot easier.
I think sororities, no disrespect to fraternities, I think sororities do that better than fraternities, probably because women do that better than men.
Probably, yeah.
Even like at your job,
Hmm.
I was a classroom teacher. So the other male teachers would be like, you'll get it, you'll pick it up. Whereas the women would be like, let me help you.
Yeah, you got to do, yeah.
Yeah, this is how you set up your classroom. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So it was a huge difference between how the men interacted and the women interacted.
Hmm.
And that may have a lot to do with
Yeah,
it.
I'm sure it does.
So let's talk briefly about. So, I don't know about you, but I'm in a fraternity and they tend to embellish. They're the there's a tendency to embellish either your processes, your initiation processes, or who you are or who you were in within this organization.
Hmm.
Um, so there's always a lot of uh, embellishment, I think, when it comes to the 80s. And for some clarity, prior to 1979, 1980, there was no limit on pledge
Right,
processes.
right.
So during that decade, from 80 to 89 or 80 to 90, um, there, some people called it the Wild West because what it appeared that uh, our predecessors tried to do was cram, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months of a pledge process into 6 to 8 weeks for fraternities and 4 to
4 to 6.
6 weeks for sororities. And it was just bedlam. It was just, whatever you could kind of think. So I think people who did not um, have to experience bedlam kind of want to make it seem like they did. And so it's a lot of embellishment, I
Hmm.
think. So I've heard some outlandish things. I've heard outlandish things about myself. I'm like, I didn't do that. And I've heard outlandish things about you.
Yes, I've heard a lot of. I'm like, that's not true.
So when we get what I would prefer the fact over the fiction. So I always say, if that's not what you did, that's not what you did. One of my sons once said, because I was in some sort of, you know, upset type of mood um about um pledging or something.
Mhm.
And he said, well, these people can't help when they were born. And that makes the most perfect sense to me. Like they can't do what we did in the 80s because they weren't born yet.
Right.
So why should I hold them to that standard when that wasn't the issue? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So I actually prefer if you stick to your reality versus if you don't. One thing I did see on Instagram was they were showing some people pledging in the
Mhm.
union as we did, and someone in the comments said I couldn't pledge above ground. And people were like, "Well, why?" Uh, so, well, because I don't know, I don't see any other way to do it because that's what I did.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you maneuver in the same
W
capacity
well,
if you don't have those
I
opportunities.
so here's this is my thing. I mean, I had my experience, which was my experience. The people 20 years ahead of me had a different experience. And
Mhm.
so I think that we have to be open to the fact that our organizations are always evolving and changing, and one process doesn't get more notoriety because they went through it when we're supposed to be progressing to something, even more.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's more important, like, what are you doing when you get in? Like, what is the work that you're doing? Are you participating? Are you a part of the national, agenda and your local, agenda as well? I mean, I think that, I listened to a podcast, it was several months ago, and one of the things that they talked about, it was the Black Greek sorority speaking, and they talked about the fact that part of some of the things that get perpetuated or blown out of proportion is because it's like, making our pledge experience the good old days.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, truth be told, if we would be honest about that, we didn't feel like they were the good old
No.
days at that particular time. And so if we told that part of it, then maybe there wouldn't be such a need to
No.
try to recreate.
I see the glamour in it if you're watching School Days
Right.
or reruns of it of a different world. And but there was no glamour in any of that. It was really um it really could have, I'll say it the way I want to say it. A weaker person would have crumbled under a lot of that
Hmm.
stress because, and very honestly, in many cases, it wasn't just your organization pledging you, but the campus,
Yeah.
as they saw fit. They're going to tell, they're going to say something, they're going to do this, they're going to do just like when you were a little kid and other little kids would tell stuff that you were doing to your parents, that same rule applied. So it wasn't the good old days of pledging. It was actually uh, kind of anxiety ridden,
Hmm.
if that's the the way you want to go with it. And keeping with this, I want to talk about paper.
Oh, no.
Because I hear people talk about paper all the time, and um, I have a saying, and you may agree, you may disagree. My saying is, which is, and I got this from someone who pledged in the 70s in my same organization when we were talking about paper in the 80s. And he said, you're all paper anyway. I don't know why there's a conversation because you didn't do, because in his mind, because we had a
Right.
defined process that made us paper.
Right.
So I say the same thing to people. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, you're all paper anyway. I don't know why this is an issue with you because you all are doing the same thing or you should be doing the same thing. And I don't know why you got to this point where you want to call each other paper because you didn't see somebody or they didn't speak to you properly or whatever the case is.
Right. I think I would. agree to that. And again, it goes back to, making sure that we don't glamorize situations that, really, are harmful or, illegal.
Yeah, yeah,
Because at the end of the day, what gets us from, being an initiate, a pledge, or, whatever, is signing that paper. I mean, at the end
oh,
of the
well,
day,
yeah,
because if you don't sign the paper, you don't get across. Like that, that is what kind of solidifies you into your organization, whichever one that might be. So honestly,
yeah,
we need to stop all of that.
yeah. I think we're long past what makes people paper and what makes people not paper.
Yeah,
And if we aren't past that, we need to be, because that's not the move.
yeah,
That is not the
yeah,
move.
yeah.
Rapid fire questions.
Oh, we're there already?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we might make 30 minutes today. I think that's a good point. The biggest question that everyone asks, would you do it again?
So, um, I mean, I guess I would say yes, but of course, knowing what I know now, I would do it, a lot differently, but I can say that on the other side. And honestly, I think that I may have waited a year, but then of course, it's no
Yeah,
guarantees.
yeah.
And so I felt like, this was my shot. I needed to take it, but that may not have been the best thing for me at that particular time. But yeah, I mean, just, my source, my sins, from my chapter in particular, like that bond, like you can't, I don't know what to say, you can't take that away. I don't know how I would have gotten through some of the challenges that I've gone through without having that,
Mhm.
sisterhood. So yeah, I would do it again.
I, thought about that in various ways, especially with new processes and things of that nature. I'm like, oh, I could have just done this. But I didn't have the money then. I doubt if I would have the money now. It's expensive to be in these organizations. I didn't make it the first time that I went out.
Yeah.
So I was determined that I was going to be in that organization
Mhm,
at that institution.
mhm.
And that kind of shaped my college careers, that I wanted to be in this organization at that institution, not later in life, not transferring, but to there. So I think it was done in the proper time and space. And I had thought about, somewhere near just before the process began, like, yeah, I could wait. I don't need to do
Mhm.
this. I'm getting older and, and college years. I don't need to do this. Now, a lot of, young people pledge as a
Yes,
senior,
yeah.
sometimes a graduating senior. And,
Mhm.
that was something we didn't really do,
Mhm.
because you needed to,
Be able to carry on that
yeah, and
organization.
that can't happen if you're gone already.
Mhm.
So it doesn't help that chapter for you to, in many cases, for you to become a member, then go. They need help, especially a lot of the smaller chapters. What's different about your organization from the time you were initiated till now? What are some of the big differences, I guess? And it could be, you know, formal, informal.
So, I think that we've obviously you've grown a lot. Um, you know, of course, the biggest difference is the initiation period. Like we've gone through a lot of different changes with that. Um, I think that throughout the last, I'm going to say at least possibly 10 years, we really have kind of gotten back to a refocus on the strengthening of our sisterhood being what makes us strong to be able to do the work that we're doing in the community. Like there's, back push to that. The other thing to me, and this is just my opinion, so I gotta preface that, is that graduate chapters have gotten really, really large.
Huge.
Like they've gotten really, really large, where that wasn't the case back, definitely in the 80s when I first,
Hmm.
came into the organization. Um, I mean, those are kind of a few other things, but I think by and large, I think we've capitalized on having some tremendous women, some real bosses, being in leadership at all levels, and that has taken us to, I want to say like we stepped back to go forward, like
Hmm.
we went back to where our founders' initial intents of the organization was, and come forward to, kind of springboard into a lot of, various areas in our local community and just, nationally, like we're, like there's some real bosses out there.
Well, to me, everyone's really wild. And this is probably a 57-year-old me talking.
Mhm.
I'm like, first of all, everybody seems to step the same or
Oh,
stroll
yeah,
or
that
whatever
part,
they're
yeah,
doing.
that part, yeah.
And they're just, nobody's real smooth with it. It seemed like people used to be smooth with it. And everybody's so wild. I mean, you see the videos, they're all sweating and stuff. I'm
Mhm.
like, so everybody's just wild like that? I mean, you gotta calm it down and bring it down. But I also remember a person in my organization who had pledged in the 60s asking me what all that stomping was about. Like, why are
Mhm.
y'all stomping? Y'all don't sing anymore? You don't
Yeah,
stroll
and
around
I was
singing?
gonna say this even the same for us, like when we, as an organization on campus were, what we call stepping, they call it strolling now. We call it stepping around the parties. The source from the 70s were like, okay, what is that? What are y'all
Hmm.
doing? Like that was not, what they had done.
So I recognize that the organization continues to move on, whether you do or not.
Right.
So you have to either move on with
With it,
it.
yeah.
So there are certain things that I really didn't like. And at a certain point, I'm like, oh well. I mean, that's just where
Mhm.
we are.
Mhm.
It's fine. Because I do remember things that we did that remember when the white Greeks used to have their letters on their sweatpants on
Oh, yeah,
their
yeah, 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 yeah.
behinds. Oh my goodness. Someone tried that. I'm not going to say who. Someone tried that and got totally roasted by the older people in that
Mhm.
organization. They were like, "We don't do that."
Yeah.
So there are certain things that I realize that we do, and certain things we don't do. And our job as the elders, I guess, is to,
Mhm.
if it's something really out of pocket, we need to say no. We don't
Yeah,
do
we
that.
don't do that, yeah.
So calm down. How does it feel to have a child in your organization?
I actually am, excited about it. I think honestly, having a, legacy has really kind of, reignited my fire and my love of the organization as I'm watching her navigate through, chapters and conferences and all the kind of things. And, sisterhood, fights and loving each other and all of that. Like
Yeah.
it's nice to see. I'm excited about it.
I'm happy to have a legacy. Your legacy inspired me more than I think because my legacy has been around for a few years now,
Hmm.
and I enjoy going to conferences with him and seeing people interact with him, and it was really good. Um, but yours, of course, is really active,
Hmm.
and it inspired me to be active, more active again,
Right, right.
activer than than I had been in recent years. Um, because I really, again, this is a lifelong commitment, and I want it to
Absolutely.
be a lifelong commitment, and I want to be a good part of the organization and be a benefit for the organization.
Right.
So, I've done a little bit more this year than I have in the most recent years.
Yeah, but you've done a lot.
I've done a lot. I've been
Hmm.
active is what I
Hmm.
used to tell people. I was active. Like I've been on officer, I've been on boards, I've been, on the national level, all those things. So I was active.
Hmm.
So a break was needed, but Yeah. Any last words
Uh, about Black Greek though?
or anything?
Uh, I don't know. I guess what I'll say is, um, it really is a beautiful thing. And, I think that sometimes when you're outside of the Divine Nine, you don't
Hmm.
really understand what all of that is about, or you don't
Hmm.
take all of that.
Or you get
Um,
those comments, oh, they're just followers.
they're the
They're just
followers, they're not
they don't know what they're
individuals.
doing.
Yeah,
I wouldn't pay somebody to do X, Y, and
yeah,
Z for
like
me.
I,
There's really no
it ain't
benefit in all that. I wouldn't be doing that.
I would say you really need to learn more. These, it's not just that they're Black Greek letter organizations, but the historical premise for the founding of each of these organizations, it has a lot to do with our Black history that we
Hmm.
need to know. Like we need to know like the whys behind why these organizations came forward at a time when, first of all, it was not popular, or it was, I don't even want to say popular. The fact that you had Black individuals going to college at a
Hmm.
time when, that was not affordable or a possibility, or it didn't make any sense because you needed to be at home helping to, work and take care of, your family. The fact that you have, first of all, these Black educated men and women. Two, you
In the
know,
early 1900s,
yes, in the early 1900s, when there are so many things we did not have. We did not have the right to vote. We, you know,
there was no affirmative action.
yeah, no, not, and the power behind these organizations to champion the government at that time. And when you
Hmm.
think about the fact that, because they started as undergraduates, these were kids.
Yeah, yeah,
These were some very powerful movers and shakers at 19, 20, 21 year olds.
right.
So I think that just understanding that a little bit more will help you to understand like the fuel behind the fire of wanting to be connected with such a great history and legacy.
I think that's all they need to head on that. So it was good to be here. It's good to be home. It's good to see you in person. And that's all, folks. See you later.